the desire for safety, the desire not to, for example, have your home invaded by violent criminals, is in fact a sign of racism.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police-free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done.
Imagine being a high school student right now. High school students who refuse to show affirmative support for Black Lives Matter on their Instagram accounts were shunned by their friends. Journalists who asked too many questions about the group were fired or silenced. Again, not an exaggeration. Now, you think people in the media would resent this? Presumably some do, but almost everybody stayed quiet about it. They were too afraid, and some applauded. The New York Times ran an op-ed demanding that people disown their own families if their families fail to support Black Lives Matter enthusiastically enough. Tell your relatives, tell your friends, the author wrote, that, quote, "You will not be visiting or answering phone calls until they take significant action in supporting Black lives through protest or financial contributions," end quote. Guest on the show, we're always proud to have him, and he joins us tonight. Peter, thanks so much for coming on. You look at some of this stuff and you just think, how did we wake up one morning and we're not even in the country that we thought we were in?
Yeah, we're at an inflection point, which is a dangerous one. I don't think many of us really contemplated that we may lose America, that the American experiment might be teetering on the brink here. But I think, as you said in your intro, this isn't really a time for cowardice or for ignorance, and unfortunately, many of our leaders are displaying both. Throughout history, we see that there are very fast movements that take the population unawares. You've got the Cultural Revolution, for example, and all these struggle sessions that we seem to be parroting right now. But this is an extraordinary time, and we have leaders that are displaying so much cowardice and ignorance comes in this fashion, Tucker. I've been living in the same inner city Black neighborhood for nearly 40 years now. And during that period of time, almost throughout, the crime rate has been dropping slowly, but steadily throughout that entire period. Then we had the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson. We had consent decrees issued all over the place. You had the Ferguson effect and police withdrawing from active policing because of the fear of being attacked, such as Darren Wilson, being accused of all manner of nefarious things, and the consent decrees also bound their hands also. So for that 35-year period, you had a decline in crime in Black neighborhoods and in all cities. And then in my neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, in that 1 year after Ferguson, there wasn't a 5% spike, not a 10% spike, not a 20% spike. There was a 90% spike in homicide rates. And in the top 50 largest cities in the United States, all had double-digit increases in homicide and other crimes after decline. So if you talk about even marginally giving consideration to defunding even slightly the police, if Black lives truly matter, fund the police. Reform the policemen who are bad, and there are bad apples everywhere, okay? There are a few here, a few there. Of course, that's going to happen in a nation of 330 million. But all of what we're witnessing right now, Tucker, is based on a false narrative that everyone has known for a long time. Not everyone. Some in positions of power for political expediency and opportunism have been expanding on a false narrative that blacks are being disproportionately targeted by cops, and also, as we saw in that awful video of Ahmaud Arbery, racist whites are, as I think it was Joy Reid said, hunting down blacks. The data have been clear for a long time. I'm the longest serving member on the Civil Rights Commission. I've been marinating in this data for a long time. If you say some of these things, you can lose your job. You can be ostracized. You are persona non grata. This is not a time for cowardice. And here's some of the stats. As opposed to what is now a given, maybe the folks at the NFL and some of the big corporations and other woke people think that cops are slaughtering black people disproportionately. The studies that have come out, the most recent one I think is by the National Academy of Sciences. Again, all these folks are not necessarily, the bastions of right-wing extremism, found that found that white perpetrators are slightly more likely to be shot by cops than blacks. Also, there's another study that shows that unarmed whites are twice as likely to be shot by cops as blacks. And the narrative shows that because of black overrepresentation in violent crime, they're actually underrepresented in police shootings as a function of the type of encounters that one would have with the cops.
If the average person said that out loud, quoting the Uniform Crime Report from the Department of Justice, they'd be fired. You're a brave man. Peter Christown, great to see you.
The president, has been attempting to address the criminal justice reform issue. He did the First Step Act. He set up the first police commission since Lyndon Johnson. We've been looking precisely at these issues, and we'll be coming out very shortly with our proposals on this. And he's also advanced opportunity zones in the inner city. And he's pushing for school choice for inner city parents. That's to me, the civil rights issue of our era.
And gasoline, thanks to Trump, is awfully cheap. So we're giving them a chance right now to do the right thing.
Serious charges for him. Meantime, Air Force Sergeant Stephen Carrillo is accused of shooting and killing California Sheriff's Deputy Damon Gutzweiler. Police say for unknown reasons, the deputy was ambushed. 2 other officers and the suspect were also injured. Finally, police have arrested 24-year-old Stephen Cannon in the shooting death of former St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn. The suspect was caught on camera looting a pawn shop. Dorn was trying to protect, then opening fire on Dorn multiple times. After surveillance video was released, the suspect tried to change his appearance. It did not work.
Issues I'm dealing with here tonight that need to be answered. Chicago's failed. New York, under Rudy Giuliani, his policies worked. Policies of President Trump, record after record low employment for every minority group in America. Leo Terrell. What Barack and Joe didn't work. That, to me, is a big part of the answer. Follow policing that works and economic policies that work.
Hey, let me tell you right now, Sean, your monologue has been spot on. Let me be very clear right now. I'm not a member of Black Lives. I don't support Black Lives because I'm against defunding the police. And I got news for you. I'm confused about Black Lives. If they are concerned about Black Lives, what about David Dorn, Cory Booker, Karen Bass, Nancy Pelosi? What about David Dorn? Oh, why not support him? Why not his concern? Oh, he's a police officer. Al Sharpton, you go to all these funerals, go to the funeral of David Dorn. I'm sick of this. This is hypocrisy at its highest level. Your monologue was spot on, and if we're going to support, if we're going to be concerned about Black lives, there's a Black life in St. Louis that was lost, and why not the outrage? Because he's a police officer. This is madness.
There's 18 people killed with these riots, many more injured. You know, Larry, I one time on this program, when Barack was president and Joe was vice president, I just rolled names, thousands of them, killed, murdered, streets of Chicago. Thousands more shot, injured, debilitating injuries. Nobody's ever fixed that. Nobody knew the names of all the people that we scrolled. They're not their policies aren't working. How come they keep getting reelected? I don't understand it.
You know, and one of those names on your scroll was the teenager who performed at Obama's second inauguration from Chicago. She was shot and killed only weeks after performing at his second inauguration. And last weekend, what do we have? 24 people shot and killed in Chicago, 61 people injured. And in St. Louis, a city that has a per capita murder rate 3 times higher than Chicago, 5 people were killed. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the rare instance in which an unarmed black man, George Floyd, is killed. It almost never happens. The police rarely kill anybody, let alone an unarmed black person, under those kinds of circumstances. And obviously it should be investigated. That's why it's news. But the problem is day-to-day cameras going on in our urban streets in Chicago, in LA, in New York, constantly. We're not talking about that.
I'll ask you both the same question. Leah, let me ask you. All right, let's say they win. In Minneapolis, they have a veto-proof majority. Defund the cops. Give me your best guess what's going to happen. How is that going to end?
Oh, I'll tell you, total chaos for the minority community. You know who depends on police more than anybody else? Let me say this to you, President of the City Council of Minneapolis. Minorities need police officers in their community. And Sean, you're spot on when you say that all these big cities, they got minority police officers. So where's this race, systematic discrimination? It doesn't exist. But to answer your question directly, poor people, minority people will be hurt if you defund the police. It's ridiculous.
How does this end, Larry?
And Sean?
If they're successful.
Sean, to follow up on Leo's point, from 1992 to 2002, for 10 years, LA had back-to-back black police chiefs. You look at the LAPD, it's about 50% Hispanic, about 30% white, about 9% black, the rest of it is Asian Pacific Islander, and still they torched police cars the other day. It doesn't matter. I'm not quite sure what they want, unless the goal really is to not prosecute black criminals, which is apparently what they want. They believe that black people are warehoused, and they believe apparently that they ought not be prosecuted, even though the likelihood is that they were injuring another black person.
Yeah, they're arresting in all these states and all these cities. Yeah, they get arrested, they get processed, no bail, they're right back out on the street to join more of the chaos. All right, Alice Marie, I thought about you a lot. Good to see you again. It's been 2 years, right, since you've been free?
Yes.
Who could ever forget that day?
It's good to see you, Sean, too.
And you said, thank you, America, thank you, Donald Trump, and for giving me a second chance, and I'll never let you down. I'll never forget what you said. You're watching what's happening. The president, from my political perspective, Alice, criminal justice reform, that happened under his watch. Opportunity zones, helping historically black colleges, the lowest unemployment levels ever for minority Americans. Now, defund the police, I don't like that idea. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I don't like that idea either. I would like to know that if I'm having trouble, that I can call on the public servants, the police, and that they're going to protect me and my family. So I just don't think that that's a good idea. I've got family members who are police officers, and I know that they don't want that label put on them the same way I didn't want a label put on me as a bad person. I made a mistake. And to
one-time offense. And you lost your life.
My first ever.
Yeah.
I was marked for death.
Yeah. And what an amazing calling you found in prison and counseling younger prisoners and having changing their lives around. All right, Fleischer, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm thinking about it politically. Okay, so the Democratic Party is the party of defunding the police? Why didn't they make criminal justice reform?
Exactly. And first off, Alice, it's wonderful to see you on this show, and I'm so glad you're free.
She'll never admit it, but we're friends, Ari. She doesn't have to admit it, that's bad.
Of course you are. I can understand why. Good people.
Very good.
Thank you.
When you care about people who are hurting, when you care about people who are needy, that's exactly why you need law and order. Without law and order, they're never going to get a chance in life. They're not going to have what other people have taken for granted, which is safe neighborhoods to grow up in, where they can be free to study, where they can be free to get a good education. They don't have to walk through metal detectors to go to schools. This is what law and order brings in people's lives. And it's those without who need it the most. And that's what's so sad about this whole movement. And it's just derailed, Sean. It's just gone off the rails when you talk about defund the police, eliminate the police.
Alice, we'll give you the last word. If we love our kids, we got to keep them safe, and we got to stop with these failing schools. It's gone on for decades.
We got to be able to look at the problem. I'm so thankful that the problem of criminal justice reform has become a priority for the White House. Looking at my case, I know that touched the heart of the president. And I know, looking at what is going on in the nation right now, that's part of criminal justice reform. And I've got confidence that it's going to be a top priority.
It's great to see you again.
Now is Niger Ennis, civil rights leader and spokesperson of the Congress of Racial Equality. Niger, why does BLM only seem satisfied these days with the complete subjugation of others, especially others who haven't been part of their movement?
Because they take their instructions, their guidance from the Marxist playbook. Look, I'm going to tell some hard truths that people are not going to want to hear. And I want to separate the protesters out there that support BLM and some of the misguided athletes and celebrities that, are pushing the Black Lives Matter narrative. Many of them are innocent, misguided, but innocent. The BLM movement, Black Lives Matter movement, was founded by Elisa Garza and a number of other co-founders that were promoting a hard Marxist and LGBT agenda. A gay agenda, LGBT, I believe is the right terminology, agenda. And look, I don't have a problem with people exercising their First Amendment rights. You have the right to organize, you have the right to protest, you have the right to come up with an agenda. But I'd be goddamn if you use the suffer and misery of Black Americans and our legacy to the United States of America as your shield and use us as cannon fodder when your agenda really has not a damn thing to do with saving Black lives. If you look at their agenda, defunding the police, that would put Black lives in danger. But it's even more than that, Laura. They have, as a part of their platform on their own website, that we want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family. And we all know that Black Americans, African Americans that are doing well, not just African Americans, Americans period, that are doing well are best when they come out of a traditional nuclear family. They seek to systematically disrupt that.
Niger, I have to say, I hadn't been aware of the LGBTQ connection at all. I have not heard that before, but I did know that it came out of the Organizing Against Wall Street movement. Before that, the Black Panther, there have been a number of movements that are some loosely related, some
variation on a Marxist theme. Right. That's what the bottom line is.
So
they want to overthrow capitalism, they want to overthrow Western civilization, and they see America as the biggest, clear, and present danger to fulfilling that agenda. And they're using Black people to do it.
And what I find particularly gross is a nice way of saying it. It's just gross to take the suffering of a family at the hands of a murderous police officer and then extrapolate that on to the rest of America and have people spitting in the face of police officers because they're so angry because they've been taught that this is what police officers think about them. And it's so upsetting, especially as African-American, some National Guardsmen, an African-American young guy, must have been 20 years old, 21, I don't know.
A Black American law enforcement officer in Oakland was murdered by one of these rioters. A retired, you've talked about David Dorn, out of St. Louis, a captain was murdered by savages committing acts of destruction against the small businesses that provide the jobs in these very communities that they pretend to be supporting. Laura, it is so gross. And for all these corporations, the Cisco Systems, the Amazon, the rest of them, that give $1 or millions of dollars to the BLM agenda, they are destroying Black lives. You want to talk about anti-Black supremacy? That's the anti-Black supremacy that's taking place.
Well, Terry Crews, of course, yesterday tweeted that he believed that Black Lives Matter was not about reconciliation, but about supremacy, Black domination, and he got huge blowback for that. But he basically came forward and said, I stand against groupthink, but the conformity is being pushed down, Niger, and that's what we're going to keep our eyes on. And the Marxist terminology is very important.
The irony, Laura, is that it's the illusion of Black supremacy and the reality of a Marxist agenda that will bury all of us.
Niger, thank you so much.
He's clearly unstable. He's more interested in his image and how he looked upon, opposed to being a leader during these difficult times. Yesterday, he smeared every single police officer in Los Angeles and across the nation by calling us killers. That's offensive, it's wrong, and suspicious.
Mr. McBride joins me now. Jamie, Mayor Garcetti said you were taking his remarks out of context, and that by killers he meant our collective burden on society, whatever the heck that means. What's your further response to his explanation?
I think it's quite clear what he meant, because he actually corrected it and said he didn't mean LAPD, he meant officers across the nation, which I think is even worse. Eric Garcetti had security detail on his residence to guard his family 24/7, his children. So he has killers guarding his children. That's how ridiculous this thing is. We have officers that were injured the last week and a half. One was shot. We have officers that had their heads fractured, their skulls fractured. They're in the hospital. And 1 minute, literally, he's praising us for our dedication and service. 2 days later, he's calling us killers. And there's something definitely wrong with Eric Garcetti. He has failed the leadership test. He's definitely unstable. And I think he needs to step back and do a self-reflect, because he just can't handle the stress of a big city like Los Angeles.